Welcome to John Redmann, Power of Attorney. Thank you for joining us. In today's show, as part of our special election coverage, we introduce you to the candidates running for Louisiana Public Service Commission District 1, which we cover in the second half of our show. But first, in part one, we will discuss COVID restrictions by local and state governments and when and how the government may impose them, and when might such limits be going too far when our individual rights are concerned, and when our local businesses or economy are being harmed too much. We have Dr. Paul Race, a constitutional law professor and now retired medical doctor, who will be joining us for that discussion. I would like to welcome Dr. Paul Race, who is a professor at the Southern University Law Center. Dr. Race has a degree in both medicine and law and has practiced professionally in both fields as a scholar. His expertise includes areas of health law, constitutional law, local real estate law, and torts. Dr. Race utilizes his knowledge and experience in both medicine and the law to develop the next generation of scholars and legal professionals at Southern. His interests include a range of topics from health policy to constitutional law. Therefore, we're very pleased to introduce him to you and welcome him to the show. Dr. Race, thanks for being here.
Oh, good to be here.
Well, this is a huge topic, and it's been debated a lot in this election period, but well before and surely long after, where the government, the local government, mayors, also the governor of the legislature, and even on the federal level, all these restrictions, mask mandates, businesses being impacted, a lot of businesses may be going bankrupt and gone forever as a result of people not being able to go to work, plants being shut down, and it's a big deal what the government feels like they've had to do on many levels, and people individually not being able to send their kids to school. There's a lot to talk about, so how about we get right to our questions?
Yes, that'll be good.
Okay, so let me pull up my questions, and the first one I have for you is first question, I'm sorry, I thought I had it right ready. So what is the power of the federal versus the state versus the local government as it relates to this health crisis and as it relates to the general health, safety, and welfare of the public?
Very good question. The federal government actually derives their power from their power to regulate commerce, which was exclusively given to the federal government. And that means that they can regulate movement of goods and all the things that have to do with the movement of goods and services and people and the things necessary for that across state lines. And to that end, they actually passed a law basically a while under this power to regulate public health, and that gives power to the CDC, specifically with regard to illnesses, things that can go across state lines. And so that's where they derive their power from.
And you said the CDC, that's the Centers for Disease Control?
Centers for Disease Control.
Okay.
The state is different. The state has general police powers. And so that under police powers, we say health, safety, and welfare. Health, safety, and welfare basically means they can do whatever it takes to take care of us in terms of that situation. The city actually is just a subsidiary of the state, which means the state can tell the city what to do. They actually have that power. The city does not have independent power from the state. Ultimately, that's where their power derives. Now, in Louisiana, the city nor the state can declare martial law, but they can declare a state of emergency, which everyone in New Orleans knows about.
Yeah. And
so therefore, in a crisis such as what we have, under their power to declare a state of emergency, they have the power to mandate mass distance, police, all of that. Now, if the state steps in and tells the city no, then reality is that the state rules over the city.
Well, and hopefully we'll have time to get back into it, but getting to the sort of the main categories, let's keep going. So on the topic of the governmental power, there's also balancing that against what a lot of people consider to be civil liberties that are guaranteed to them. The freedom to do what you want to do and run your business as you feel like you should be able to do. Freedom to associate, things like that. How do you balance that?
Well, that is a political question, but ultimately people have a right to do what they want as long as they don't affect other people. So your liberty, your civil liberties tend to stop when they start to affect other people. The whole concept of mask is based upon the protection of everyone. The primary purpose for mask, and this has been said many times, is to prevent you from infecting other people. So it's closer to DUIs and driving under influence, driving while drunk, as opposed to you smoking. You can smoke all you want, you can hurt yourself all you want, but when you start driving under the influence, you start to affect other people. And so when you refuse to wear a mask, you are actually affecting everybody else. And that's where there's that balance.
And so there are people out there who say, well, I feel fine, and I don't think I'm infected, so I shouldn't have to wear a mask, except, number one, you might be infected and not know it and be spreading the infection, the COVID infectious germs. And maybe that's why, as a safety precaution, the state says wear the mask just to play it safe. And your example of driving while intoxicated, you may say, I don't think I'm drunk. Well, but maybe you are. And number two, you could harm somebody else. And you gave me an example before we taped, saying even smoking, there's something called secondhand smoke. Your smoking can harm somebody else too, including children who.
Right. That's why they stopped smoking on planes. Because of the risk to other people who flew the plane, but especially to flight attendants who have to be on that plane. So we've had many, many laws that are out there based upon you as an individual hurting other people, regardless of what you have thought. Now, I accept and believe that there is a balance that has to occur in terms of the economy and what has to be done. The problem is that the state has a right to enforce. Now, we actually have not. This state has not tried to enforce masks. We've tried to encourage. But as I heard one physician say the other day, we have this problem where I am now risking my family trying to take care of because of this outbreak, and this outbreak is occurring because people refuse to wear masks. And that is just a problem. So.
All right. Let's keep it moving.
Yes.
What about it, though? You mentioned in Louisiana, we were doing pretty good. Initially, we had an outbreak, but then we were doing really good. Now, here we are in latter part of November. We're seeing spikes. What can or should government officials do with folks or businesses that refuse to comply with the restrictions that the government is encouraging or requiring, as far as shutting down businesses or requiring restaurants to limit how many people come in?
If people had listened to the experts, this is not a surprise that we're having a big peak. What probably should have been done early was shut down, get control, make sure it's not an issue, open up in the summer, letting everybody know that this may happen again in the winter, so that they are prepared for it. The problem is that they never really did what they were supposed to do before. And so they went with the volunteer way of doing it, and it did not work. I think at this point, either you shut down some of the businesses, or you strongly enforce the mask, the 6 feet. And I see people online all the time who have no concept of what 6 feet is. I'm 5'10" and a half. As I told my son one day, you're too close. If I can't lie down between you, you are too close. And we have people 2 feet apart, and they think that that's fine. So the bottom line, if we want to give people more rights, more businesses more rights, then we're going to have to force them to enforce mask, distancing, space, and what that means is either we punish that business, which you can punish by civil fines, you can punish if they really mess up by closing them, or the other thing you can do is enforce the police to help the businesses, which basically means if somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to do, call the police and then have them escorted out, trespass. The bottom line is there is no right to go into a business and tell them that I'm not wearing a mask. Just like a business can say no shoes, no shirts, no service, they can say no shoes, no shirts, no mask, no service. You can't come to my house and tell me that you're not going to wear a mask. You can't go to a private business and tell them.
That sounds like great advice. Well, we're just about out of time, but and I think you mentioned before, this is not like we've never seen this movie before. You mentioned before, we've been down this road before, recently with Katrina, where the state had to invoke emergency powers, but also we've had a pandemic before 100 years ago, correct?
Correct. And the 1918 pandemic killed a lot more people actually than COVID has. It was one of the worst pandemics ever. It was the worst pandemic going back to the Black Death, and people were not honest, and it caused it to spread even more. But in the meantime, by the way, the federal government started isolating people and quarantining people.
Well, it looks like that's all the time we have. I wish we had another hour for this. It's so fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Race. Everyone, please stay tuned for our next segment, where we will introduce the candidates running for the important position of the Public Service Commissioner. Thank you again, Doctor.
My pleasure.
Welcome back to the show. While we were able to communicate with Commissioner Skrmetta's campaign, unfortunately, due to conflicting schedules, he was not able to attend our interview. We would still like to let our viewers know a bit more about the commissioner, however. You can visit www.ericskrmetta.com to learn more about him and his platform. And let us tell you more right now. So Commissioner Skrmetta is a lifelong resident of the New Orleans area. He attended Brother Martin High School. In 1985, he graduated from Southern University School of Law and passed the Louisiana Bar. In 1986, Skrmetta received his LLM, or Master's in Admiralty Law, from Tulane University Law School. Mr. Skrmetta was elected to the Louisiana Public Service Commission in 2008 and was reelected in 2014. He now seeks to be reelected there at this time. So his campaign also sent us this slide, which you're looking at on your screen right now, indicating various bullet points and providing his ballot number, which is 68, and also asking that you viewers, go to his website and learn more details about what his campaign says he has accomplished and what he seeks to accomplish. And we, of course, recommend that you do, so you may vote. At this time, we will take a short pause, and we'll be right back to continue our show. I'll be interviewing candidates for the Public Service Commission District 1 position. The Louisiana Public Service Commission, LPSC, as it's also known, define themselves as an independent regulatory agency dedicated to serving the public interest by assuring safe, reliable, and reasonably priced services for public utilities and common carriers. The overall goals of the Commission, according to them, are to ensure a regulatory balance that enables utilities to provide customers with safe, adequate, and reliable service at rates that are just and reasonable, equitable, and economically efficient, and that allow utilities an opportunity to earn a fair rate of return on their investment. The vote for this position has gone to a runoff between the incumbent Commissioner Eric Skrmetta and Mr. Allen Borne Jr. Due to a conflict of scheduled Commissioner Skrmetta's, he was not able to make it for this show, but we will share a little about his campaign platform just a little later. We do, however, have the pleasure of meeting Mr. Allen Borne Jr., who is a local New Orleanian. He attended De La Salle High School, graduated from Tulane Law in 1984, and for over 34 years he has represented thousands of clients. Mr. Bourne is also an adjunct professor of law at Tulane Law School. He is a Louisiana Bar Foundation Fellow, a member of the Louisiana Association for Justice, a member of the Louisiana and Washington, D.C. bars, and was a candidate for the state Senate in 2019. Mr. Bourne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Appreciate being here.
Well, it's our pleasure. So let's get right to it. We've got a bunch of questions for you. So let's start. In your own words, what does it mean to you to ask the voters to elect you to this position? And what is the impact that you hope to have if given the privilege of serving in this seat as a public service commissioner?
John, like you said, I founded Bourne Law Firm right out of law school in 1985, and I've been fighting for the rights of my clients for the past 35 years, and this October.
Okay.
So, and I'd like to take those advocacy skills to the Public Service Commission because I feel that the people of Louisiana need a voice on the commission that's looking out for the consumer and not the big utility companies. As you were saying, the Public Service Commission regulates all the utilities in the state, Entergy, CLECO, all of those, as well as intrastate pipelines and trucking, telecommunications, and they oversee the spending of hundreds of millions of dollars each year. And I feel that the people need a voice on the commission. I have committed not to take any contributions from the utility companies I regulate, unlike my opponent who's received hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think that's important so that you have an independent voice on the Public Service Commission.
Thank you for that answer. Now, next question. What is the most pressing issue that you believe is facing the PSC today?
I believe it's the amount of money that the utility companies put in campaign contributions to the commissioners. And I believe that our legislature should do like other states, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and not allow utility companies that are regulated to give contributions to the regulators. That's fundamental so that we have an independent commission that does the job. Remember, these are regulated monopolies. Early in the last century, the best way to, they found to get everybody the lights and the utilities they needed was to do it by a monopoly, but a regulated monopoly. And monopolies on their own, they're businesses, and they can take advantage of situations because there's no competition. The regulated monopoly is regulated by the Public Service Commission, and we are there to stand up for the consumer and the people to make sure that the utility companies give us low cost, efficient, reliable, and sustainable utilities.
So let's take a step back. I want to be sure that I'm keeping up with you. So the Public Service Commission has the authority through the state to tell the utility companies that regulate lights, utilities, electricity, all the things that you get your bills in the mail usually every month. And currently there's no legal problem with these utility companies who are policed, regulated by the utility companies with giving donations to people on the Public Service Commission.
That is correct, and I find that myself very distasteful and appalling because it takes away the independence of your judgment. If they don't give those contributions because they're good-hearted, they're businesses and they expect something in return. In the past, one of the past presidents of Entergy has actually claimed that they own 3 seats on the Public Service Commission.
And by own, that means we gave money to people on the board seeking to get reelected, and the utility companies say we have influence because we gave a lot of money to people to help them get elected or get reelected to the board, and so we have a very friendly relationship is what it sounds like you're saying, or what it sounds like it's being suggested.
That's what I glean from the statement.
And
yes.
If I'm understanding you're saying if the utility companies are prevented from being able to make contributions to those people who are going to be policing them, then at least it's more likely that consumers, people who live in those areas, can expect the regulators, that is the people who sit on the board, they're not going to have their influence. They're not going to be influenced by the utility companies.
Well, you know, there's two sides to this. It's a regulated utility. The utilities have their needs for getting a reasonable return on their investment. So we need to see that that happens because they're providing the service and we need the services. On the other hand, we need to look out for the consumer to make sure the consumer is getting the lowest price as well as the most efficient way. Believe it or not, in Louisiana, or in this district, there's over 100,000 people that pay as much as 25% of their monthly income to utility, for their utility bill. And that's an enormous amount and puts enormous strains on people. So we have to look at that. Other states, for the retired, the elderly, for the people in low income, the disabled, they actually give some discounts for those people. And I think in Louisiana we need to look at doing the same thing for that vulnerable population.
I would like to talk more about how you might drain that swamp, but we need to get going here.
Sure.
What sets you apart from your counterpart in this runoff, and what differences do the voters need to understand about these differences?
Well, like I said, I've been practicing law for 35 years. I've represented thousands of clients during that time honorably, and that we have the experience to advocate and look out for the little guy. My clientele is a neighborhood client. I'm in uptown New Orleans, and people just walk in the door to get advice. So I'm willing to listen. I'm a good listener, and if people have problems with their utilities or their telephone service, I have an open door, and I want to hear about it, and I want to do what I can to solve it. So I will be accessible. I also, an important difference is I won't be beholden to the utility companies I regulate. I will treat them fairly, but I will also listen to both sides of the story like a judge and decide what's the most efficient way to go forward for both parties. But again, the Public Service Commission is there to protect the consumer.
And we're starting to run short on time, so let me try and keep things moving. In your eyes, what makes this position so important to the voters, to the city, and as a candidate for this role, what responsibility are you asking for your neighbors to trust you to fulfill?
So right now in Louisiana, a lot of the power plants that we have are aging out. We still have coal-fired power plants in Louisiana. Gas plants produce half the pollution that coal plants do. We are on the verge of new technologies in solar and wind that make these technologies low cost enough so that we can afford to direct the utility companies to start using more solar power, more wind power. A lot of people have rooftop solar and want to have rooftop solar. That was gutted when they gutted the net metering procedure that they had, and really stop that. So I want to go in, I want to have clean energy. I'm a supporter of rural internet. Internet no longer is a luxury. We get education, telemedicine, and jobs, and we all need equal opportunity to high-speed internet, whether it be rural or low income. We all need that.
All right. Well, I wish we had more time to talk about, that transition, how long you'd allow for it, but I'm afraid we're running out of time. Last question. Would you please tell our viewers your ballot number and where they can find more information about you and your platform?
Yes. I'm Allen Borne Jr. I'm number 63 on the ballot. Early voting starts today, November 20th, and goes to the 28th, and the election day is December 5th. It's every vote counts, and like I say, you get what you vote for. So I'm asking for your support and your prayers in this election.
Thank you kindly for that. It's been very informative and very insightful for us to learn about you and your platform. Best of luck to you in your race. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back right after this break.
Thank you, John.